That was wrong button. Record, record, record. Pause, record. Damn it. Yeah. All right, so the recording is going to take a while to post because I accidentally started recording to my computer instead of to the cloud. So there's that. The exam is next week. No, yeah, on the 14th. Exam is Wednesday, May 14th. Um, I guess for the other class, that would be May 15th. It covers chapters 8 and 9 and 10 and 11. Will 11 work? Question mark. We'll see how much of chapter 11 we do. We might not do all of it, unfortunately. Um, exam 3 review is this Friday, I guess. I guess I have to work this Friday on the 9th. All right, you guys are all muted. That sound when someone leaves is no longer there at 11 a.m. How long is it gonna last? I don't know, however long it takes. Exam 3 practice questions are going to be posted soon. And I guess I'll give them to you next class as well. Although I think there's already exam practice questions on Canvas. Let me see if I can find it. Link, course link, assignments, exam 3, practice questions. Yeah, it's right there. All right, so yeah, exam 3 is next Wednesday. Exam 3 review is Friday, May 9th at 11. Exam 3 practice questions on paper are coming soon. And yeah, that's about it. So the main ones I think you should focus on are chapter 9 and 10. Chapter 9 is hypothesis testing. Chapter 9 is confidence intervals, and chapter 10 is hypothesis testing. Honestly, as you guys kind of saw, hypothesis testing, once you kind of get the basics down, it's just a repeat of the same thing over and over and over. So it's not that bad. I don't want to say it's super easy, but it's not the worst thing. Also, you are going to, did I pass these out last class, the exam 3 helpful stuff? Yeah. Okay, if you were not here last class, you might want to pick up a copy. But if you remember, this right here is really useful, especially the last page. Because the last page, remember, you can use on the exam. So you can use it as it is.
The cheat sheet for 9, 10, and 11. Can we get one for chapter 8 too?
No, I didn't make it, so someone else. Yeah. If you make it, then I can distribute it. Possibly. Actually, no, yeah, I can distribute it if you make it. Exactly. Yeah, so like the one right here that I gave, I didn't make that cheat sheet thingamajig. That was the student who made it, and she did a really good job of organizing it. So I figured I might as well share it. I might as well bring it up too. Where was it? Exam 3 hopeful stuff. Yeah, so again, like the first page is basically chapter 9. So this is the basics of chapter 9. If you want to know again, you were dealing with either the mean or proportion, and whichever parameter you were dealing with, you were either trying to get its point estimate, or you were trying to get the confidence interval for either the mean or the proportion. And notice again that the functions for the confidence interval are the same functions for the hypothesis test. So if I want to get a confidence interval for the population mean, stat t stats 1 sample. If I wanted to get if I wanted to perform a hypothesis test regarding a mean, it would also be stats t stats 1 sample. And then sample size type questions are here. So if you're wondering kind of what's on chapter 9, there's a bit more in chapter 9 than just what's on this sheet, but this is a big it's a really good summary for chapter 9. The next page again is general steps in hypothesis testing. So again, it doesn't go super in depth, but it's a good sort of, guide. So figure out what your hypotheses are. You do have to read the question, figure out what they are, what claim or what hypothesis they want you to test. Then you compute the test statistic and or p-value. If you're doing proportion, this is the test statistic. If you're dealing with the mean, this is the test statistic. And again, the way you're going to get it usually, actually on the exam, I don't think I'm going to I'm not going to ask you to do it by hand, really at all. So you can do it with the formula if you want to. You look really happy to hear that. But remember, the other way is if you're dealing with a proportion to get the test statistic and p-value, you can do stat proportion stats 1 sample. And then if you're testing for the mean, that's stat t stats 1 sample. Yeah, so then there's also, I don't remember if I mentioned this in your class, so I'll just mention it again. For the critical regions, obviously you want to check whether the test statistic is in the critical region or not, or that's the classical approach. Check if your test stat is in the critical region. And that will decide whether you reject the null hypothesis or you do not reject the null hypothesis. Or you can use the p-value method. So you get the p-value and your level of significance. The p-value you usually get from StatCrunch. The level of significance, alpha, is given in all these problems. So that's the nice thing about the p-value method, is it's really straightforward how to do it. Once you get the p-value, you're basically done with it. For the critical regions, if you're testing for a proportion, that's going to be table 5. And if you're testing for a mean, because your hypothesis or because your test statistic is a t-test statistic, you're going to be basing your critical region on a t-distribution, which is table 7. That is something you'll have to memorize. I don't think it might be on the cheat sheet, actually. I'm not sure. And then the decisions are the decisions, the conclusion sentences are the conclusion sentences, the format. I don't think there's anything else I really need to add here. But again, these are your notes, so you can. The only thing that you can't really, I wouldn't recommend writing on is that last sheet, front and back. You can highlight stuff here, but the one that says for use during exams, that sheet, you can't write anything extra. You can box, you can highlight, you can do things like that, but you can't write like extra formulas or anything. And yes, I know other people that you have a cheat sheet that you can write whatever, and then you write like super small, like 1,000 formulas on like one single note card. But that's not happening in this class. So yeah. Those are the basic steps in hypothesis testing. The exam 3 study guide is here. I'll just go to the one that you guys have right here. I think the only thing that, let's see, this is your confidence intervals, so these are still good for you guys. The requirements for chapter 9, you check that n times p hat times 1 minus p hat is greater than 10. If you're trying to do a confidence interval for proportion, if you're doing a confidence interval for the mean, this is the requirement. N is 30 or more, or the data comes from a normally distributed population. The margin of errors are still correct. So those are how to compute the margins of error. The calculator function isn't really useful for you guys because you guys haven't been using a TI-84. If you want to use a TI-84 and figure out how to do that, that's fine. But this probably isn't really relevant to you guys, the calculator function portion. Sample size type part is also nice because it gives you the formula, so you don't even have to look in your formula card. It's right there for you guys to use. Um, the critical values, I think that might be the only one where inverse norm was a function on the calculator, and we're not using the calculator, so I don't know if I would include that part right there. Although this part right here is still useful. It is a Z critical value, if you're testing or if you're trying to find a confidence interval for the proportion. And if you're trying to find a confidence interval for the mean, the critical value is T sub alpha over 2. I guess calculator function, like I said, that's not very useful. So yeah, that's not that useful. Back page is chapter 10. It has the error types up here. It also has, if you're doing a confidence interval for proportion, this is the condition. This is where you get the critical value. This is your test statistic. You're not using a TI-83 anymore, so that's why I cut that part off. And then if you're testing for a mean, this is a condition. This is where you find the critical value. This is the test statistic. Keep in mind also for the test stats that you can do them by whatchamacallit, by StatCrunch. Stat T stats or stat proportion stats, depending on whether you're testing for a mean, that would be stat T stats. If you're testing for proportion, it would be stat proportion stats. And the form, not the formulas, but the StatCrunch info for how to do that is going to be given. So just like in the other exams where I put the StatCrunch stuff on the front page, same thing on this one. And I'll try to have for next class, like what exactly it would look like. Okay, so does everyone have this packet? Okay, as a reminder, if you don't have the packet, please, get a copy. And try not to lose it. Because if you lose it, I might not have extra copies for on the exam. And I don't want that to happen to you guys. Okay. I want to move on to the notes for chapter 10 and finish that up. On page 13. Give me 1 second. Let me pull out my notes. Okay, so this is a really basic guide. It's not like super thorough or anything. But one of the main difficulty that I've sort of seen with students in this entire section, basically, like chapter 9, chapter 10, especially, is knowing what to do and kind of differentiating. Because, like I said, the things aren't that different. Like you're really just doing confidence intervals and hypothesis tests for the most part. Um, but there are going to be different conditions. So again, just as a reminder, if you're testing for a proportion, if your hypothesis test involves proportions, then the condition you're going to have to do is that you're going to have to check that n times p naught times 1 minus p naught is greater than or equal to 10. And you're going to use the normal distribution with z naught. That's your test statistic. Again, you're not always going to do that by hand. So usually the way you would get the test stat is stat proportion stats one sample. And then you would use, whenever you're dealing with proportion, again, notice that it's a Z test statistic. And so your critical value is going to come from a Z distribution, table 5. And now it's going to be a little bit different if you're dealing with the mean. If you're dealing with the mean, you notice that Yeah, if you're dealing with the mean, all of these actually change. So the condition's gonna change, the stat crunch function is gonna change, and if the table that you're gonna be using for the critical value is also gonna change. If you're dealing with the mean, when I say if you're dealing with the mean, if you're doing a hypothesis test where the mean is inside your hypotheses, then the condition you have to check is you have to check that the sample size is greater than 30, or the data comes from a normally distributed population. And then you have to check t-stats for the test statistic, t-stats one sample. And then last but not least, for the critical value, table 7. So the first two parts are gonna, like, for both, whether you're testing proportion or whether you're testing the mean, the condition and the way to get the stat crunch function or the stat crunch function to get the test statistic, those are going to be given. So these two things are basically going to be given on the test, either on that cheat sheet thingamajig, or it's going to be on the front page of the exam. The part that's not going to be given and that you do kind of have to, I don't know if I would say figure out, but either memorize. Well, yeah, memorize or sort of figure out is where you're getting the critical value from. So that part you are going to have to, I would recommend to just memorize that. Another way that you can sort of remember is that you're going to be using the Z table when you have a Z critical value, and you're going to be using a T table when you have a T critical value. Sorry, I should rephrase that. You're going to be using the T table for your critical value when your test statistic is a t-test statistic. And you're going to be using the z-table for your critical value when your test statistic is a z-test statistic. And how will you know if it's a z-test statistic? It says right here, it's z when you're dealing with proportion. I think that's basically it. We're not doing standard deviation. Do you guys want to do hypothesis testing for standard deviation too? Okay, we don't got to do it then. Do you guys agree with that? Okay. All right, and that's it for 10.5. That's the notes for section 10.5. Yeah, 10.5 is just like a recap of what happened in 10.1, 10.2, 10.3. So that means activity time. Chapter 10, activity 3, if you have not picked it up, copy over here. Sorry, did anyone still need this page up? All right, so we have 6 hypothesis tests. Then we have type 1, type 2 errors. And then we're gonna have well, you can check out page 8. So right now we're gonna focus on the first 6 pages because there's 6 hypothesis tests. And I think the way we're gonna do it is let's do it this way. Let's see, we have 3 sections, and I don't want to do by rows because some rows are not equal at all. So we're gonna do it by sections. Let's see, we have South Side, we have Mid City, and then we have North Side. So that's 3 sections of the class. There's 6 questions. So that's 2 questions per section. Yeah. Okay. Yep, 8 pages. Let's see. 1, 3, 2, 5, and then 3, 6. Okay. Sorry, I'm doing it in my head. All right, so South Side. You guys are doing question 1 and question 4. Mid City. You guys are doing question 2 and question 5. And then North Side. You guys are doing question 3 and question 6. So what I want everybody to focus on right now is reading the question and then doing the hypotheses. If you guys get ahead, you guys can work on part B, C, D, and E of the question, as well as maybe F if you have an extra part or something. But for now, what I'm trying to focus on for everybody is just getting the hypotheses down. So I want like the hypothesis for question 1, same thing for question 2, read the question, hypotheses. Question 3, same thing, read it, get the hypotheses. Question 4, same thing, and so on and so on. What I would also recommend is probably writing down or figuring out what all of the sample data is as well. One other thing I want to point out just one more time is, again, when you're reading these questions, because you notice that these questions are getting long and they're getting sort of big. It's not super easy to tell exactly right away what they're always asking. It takes a bit of time sometimes. And so I do recommend going back or let me bring up there we go. I do recommend what I talked about, the 3 different types of sentences. So you're going to have sentences that give context to the situation, and those are useful. You're also going to have sentences that give sample data. Those are even more useful because you are going to need the sample data to do a hypothesis test. Or if you're doing, a hypothesis test. You're also going to have sentences that specify the objective or specify what you need to find. That's the most important type of sentence in the problem. And what I recommend is actually, what I like to do is I like to actually highlight. Like when I find that sentence or something, I like to highlight it because that tells me what's gonna be in my hypothesis quite often, which is super useful for obvious reasons. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is get into your groups, read the question. So notice I said get into the groups before read the question. So get into your groups, read the question, and then identify your hypotheses. Turn around, say hi to everybody, and you guys are one big giant group. If you guys want to separate, sort of like one group, half of you guys work on one problem, half the other half work on a different problem, that's fine. But I would let you guys figure that out.
So this has to work on one.
Sure, so you guys get together and figure that out. So all you guys turn around, come together, and we do. Turn 90 degrees. And you guys don't know each other's names. Hold on to review. I think everybody over. Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Yeah. And what are you guys gonna work on?
Yeah, there's gonna be 3 and then 6, and then 6, and then 6.
All right, who's gonna work on question 6?
Okay, so let's.
All right, so go over there and then question 3.
That's 47, next is 437.
And you're up. Jazz, you're part of the group. What side is this again? North side. Your sample side. South side, I'm sorry, south side. All right, south side, let's get together. Can you come up with a little set? Joe. You guys turn around, Kiana. You guys know what it is. Kiana, they're gonna need your knowledge today. Yep. They're gonna need your knowledge. Yes, sir. Kiana, I do need you. Yeah, so which ones are you guys working on again?
Yeah, it's not anything that's like related to higher.
So which one do you guys want to work on? Okay, who does it now? Go ahead.
Public nothing, I instructor suggests that students spend 2 hours outside of class studying for 3 hours.
So,
Yeah.
we know.
Well, they're in the details, but-
By the way, you guys are presenting. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. This kid.
Now, this is asking the hypothesis. That's the H on the H one. That's what we're finding. That's what we want. And then later on, we will use that information. So what do you guys think about the hypothesis? Do you guys have any ideas or thoughts or? What are the thoughts? Like what she, I think what she focused on is they say. That's a point on what. Test hypothesis. So that's kind of telling you what's gonna be your hypothesis right there. This test hypothesis, so that's like, okay, whatever falls. That's gonna be your hypothesis.
Our number of successes, X or here, means the number of blocks. And then question 6 would be you better. Did
you guys discuss about the hypothesis?
Under the table.
Table 5.
Yeah, because I think that's.
Where it's at, 5. You look at the table right here, so Audrey.
So it's gonna be 2.33. Okay.
What's the, about, it would be a 6 question mark. Yeah, Audrey, can you share?
Oh, so it would be written down like, oh my God, okay.
Questions about the hypothesis? You guys have 2 5s, right? The 2 of you said you guys have, about 5.
Oh, we're working all it, on this thing, all together.
That's whether this represents evidence that they're for attitude towards quality of education has changed from 2002. So what wasn't an object done, proportions for 7%. So either it's still the same. I think what I would recommend, sorry, real quick, is again with your H1, try to put it in words. That way, when you get to the conclusion, then it's a lot easier to write it.
Oh, there's.
Okay.
Not equal. Or you can say parents as change. Because that would be the same thing. It's no longer. Yeah, so if the question doesn't indicate a direction like less than or more than or something, generally we're gonna assume that it's not equal. Because that's what change would be. It's no longer 47%. It's something else. It's not equal to 47. You're welcome.
That is 13.
Remember, you guys are working on hypothesis, like in question, one question. Do the hypothesis. And then we'll kind of get to the critical values and the rest of them.
Yeah.
So we're just focusing on part A.
And our P value would be 0.0.
Yeah, and then later on, you'll kind of get to the critical reading stuff. And so question one, get part A, that's what question four is called. Part A.
It's for, yeah, these that both.
So we're doing this as such. We're working on part A primary. If you get ahead, that's fine, but I want 1A and yeah, 4A.
Good end of that, but it has things that different wordings. Yeah.
Not, but you know how it's helpful.
They're both discussing.
Now, I recommend working with other people because otherwise this is over.
Forget to put, forget to put out. That, before you start, put that.
Yeah, then the cell.
When you go.
Yeah, I don't know why you guys would.
That, where you get.
So for this one, we're doing, staff proportion, staff response. Okay.
We were general.
They started with.
Yeah. No, that can tell by your hypothesis.
So.
The symbol is one.
No,
The P value.
yeah, but it's negative.
So we were, 47.
How, wait, how do I know that? Like, do we, like?
You also have the speech. Check there as well.
Oh, this all good.
Yeah, it's in the margin.
Right. It's gotta be on
I'm
there.
pretty sure it's not that way.
What was
Oh,
those?
I know it's.
Slide. I thought it was for that.
No, then you,
No, it's.
all right. So the feedback and this is with.
Yeah, you could have both negative 196 on one side and positive 196 on the other.
That's the same. It doesn't.
Okay.
So with the creative, that's like.
Sorry.
And you can tell from the P value, because if the P is low.
Right.
You were.
Yeah. Now, you already supplement, so I check the test. That is.
Or we were exactly right now.
You are rejected.
Yeah, because your test that is big.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So it's definitely.
For the p-value method, do we compare it to the level of significance?
Mhm.
And if it doesn't say that, I mean, we normally compare it to the critical value.
No, you always compare the p-value to you always compare the p-value to the level of significance. Yes. So did you pick up do you have the sheet right here?
I thought it's the p is low.
Do you have the sheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's either you check, you compare the test that, compare the test that, or you can compare the p-value p-value to.
Oh, I thought you compared it to the hypothesis.
No, compare the level.
Never?
Never, no.
Then what's if the p is low, reject the head?
If the p is lower than the level of significance, then you reject the null hypothesis. It does depend because some of them say to use the classical method and some of them say to use the p-value method. Classical method is you check if your test stat is in the critical region. Yeah, so like question 1 you see right there says use the classical method. All right, so let's go ahead. We're gonna work on questions 1. We're gonna go through all the hypotheses and you guys are gonna present your hypotheses. All right, so number 1, college math instructors suggest that students spend 2 hours outside of class studying for every hour in class. So for 4 credit hour math class, students should spend at least 8 hours. That is 480 minutes studying each week. The given data from Michael Sullivan's college algebra class represents the time spent on tasks recorded in MyMathLab in minutes for randomly selected students during the 3rd week of the semester. So again, so far it looks like they've been giving context. Determine if the evidence suggests students may not, in fact, be following the advice. That is, does the evidence suggest students are studying less than 480 minutes each week? Use a 0.05 level of significance. All right, Southside, I think that was your question. Do you guys have the hypotheses, yes or no? Southside? All right, so go ahead and write the hypotheses. You can zoom in like this. If you need to erase, use the other side.
And look at that beautiful.
All right, so the no hypothesis is use 480. And the alternate hypothesis is use greater than.
Oh, wait, less than, right? Okay, wait. How do I erase?
Other side. Yeah, with that. Is less than 480. And then I don't think we need this right here. It's just either it is equal to or not. Yeah. All right, and then the rest of the south side, do you guys agree with that? Okay. And one other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the H1 in words because again, the H1 is I'm gonna have to put it in words when I get to the conclusion sentence part of the problem. So we want to see whether or not the amount that students are studying is less than 480. Or another way of thinking about it, students studying less than the recommended time. All right, awesome. Thank you. All right, everyone give a round of applause to Southside. Kiana specifically. Awesome. She makes my muse look terrible because her muse are beautiful and mine are not. Yes, forgive me. Okay. And then again, if you've worked on part B, C, D, and E on this question, that's fine, but I want to go to the hypotheses because I think the hypotheses are important. Someone else from Southside, where does it kind of tell you what the hypothesis is going to be? I'll take it. Yeah, exactly. So does the evidence suggest students are studying less than 480 minutes each week? Again, that's where they're kind of telling you like that's what they want you to find out. Awesome. Okay, so let's go to 2A. In August 2002, 47% of parents with children in grades K through 12 were satisfied with the quality of education that students receive. A recent Gallup poll found that 437 of 1,013 parents, that looks like a sample, with children in grades K through 12 were satisfied with the quality of education the students receive. At a 0.05 significance level, assess whether this represents evidence that parents' attitudes towards the quality of education in the United States has changed since August 2002. All right, so what are your hypotheses?
Oh, right. I gotta write P. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah, if you need to erase, you
Yeah.
can use the other side. So this side, like the eraser side? Exactly.
Cool. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So the null hypothesis.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, this is kind of the point. So the null hypothesis is that the proportion equals 47%, and your H1 is that the proportion is not equal to 47%. Again, I want to put my alternative in words because I am going to need it later for the conclusion sentence. So another way of saying this is, again, keep in mind what we're doing. We want to see whether parents' attitude has changed since August 2002. What was going on in 2002? 47% of parents were satisfied. Is it still that? Is it the same or has it changed? Is it no longer 47%? So that's another way of saying H1 in words. Parents' attitudes have changed. I'll put parents' attitudes towards ... has changed since August 2002. Awesome. All right. Thank you, Lusa. Thank you, Mid-City. All right. Everyone give them a round of applause. Woo. Man, you guys are not very supportive. I'll take it though. Okay, let's move on to number 3. Among 734 randomly selected internet users, it was found that 540 of them use the internet for making travel plans based on data from Gallup poll. Use a 0.01 significance level to test the hypothesis that among internet users, more than 50% use the internet for making travel plans. You're not going to have to indicate the type 1, type 2 errors here, but you will have to indicate the hypotheses. And the hypotheses are, and then if you need to write this side, if you need to erase this side, and then you can zoom in, zoom out.
Wait, what am I writing?
The hypotheses for part A. The H naught and the H1. And it looks like the null hypothesis is that P equals 0.5 or 0.50, whichever one you want. And then H1 is that P is greater than 50% or 0.5. Thank you. All right, give it up for Northside and Ariel. Awesome. Okay, and then again, it might be useful to put your H1 in words here. This is the proportion of people who use the internet to make travel plans. Or another way of saying that is more than 50% use the internet for making travel plans. And obviously this is old because I think everyone at this point, almost everybody used the internet to make travel plans. Have any of you guys not made travel plan or have any of you guys made travel plans without the internet? Yeah, at this point, I think everyone books in their hotels and stuff based on the internet. Okay, so more than 50% of people, randomly selected internet users use it to make travel plans. Any questions? I think that's basically it. Are you guys still writing that down? Okay. I am gonna move on to number 4, which is going back to Southside. All right, in 1989, the mean age of an inmate on death row was 36.2 years of age. This is not a fun example, according to data obtained from the US Department of Justice. A sociologist wants to test the claim that the mean age of death row inmates is greater than the 1989 mean. She randomly selects 41 death row inmates and finds that their mean age is 42.1 years old with a standard deviation of 9.6 years. Test her claim at the 0.05 significance level. So this is where they're telling you what they want. And then you also have to remember, what was her claim? What are you testing? Her claim was that the mean age is greater than it was in the 1989. All right, so go ahead. What are the hypotheses? And again, if you want to erase, use the other side, and then you can scroll and zoom in, zoom out with your fingers. Yeah, so no hypothesis is that the mean equals 36.2. And then your alternate hypothesis, you want to see if it's increased, if it's more than 36.2. Thank you. Awesome. All right, give it up for Southside. Give it up for Michelle. Awesome. Yeah. And for those of you guys kind of wondering, like, because there's a lot of numbers going on. You know, you have this 42.1, you have the 1989, you have the 36.2. So this is one of those questions where you do have to read it and then you have to read it back to kind of understand what they're asking. So I'm going to start sort of at the end. They want you to test her claim. What is her claim? Her claim is that the mean age is greater. It doesn't say it's greater than 1989. It says it's greater than the 1989 mean. What was it in 1989? In 1989, the mean age was 36.2. So we want to see if it's greater than what it was in 1989. If it's now more than 36.2, because that's what it used to be. So again, your H1, one way you can put this in words is that the mean age is greater than what it was in 1989. Mean age of death row inmates greater than in 1989. The part I don't like doing about this, the part of this assignment I don't like is that when I make everyone else write, it like makes the comparison between my writing and everyone else's really apparent. My writing is trash and everyone else's is nice. You guys have like nice muse and then my muse are like all weird. Okay, anyways, so that's number 4. All right, you guys ready for number 5? All right. Oh, technically, a number 5 has 2 parts, I think. Yeah, because you had like a part I and you had a part A. All right. In his book, The Signal and the Noise, Nate Silver analyzed 733 predictions made by experts regarding political events. Of these 733 predictions, 338 were categorized as mostly true. So part I, determine the sample proportion of political predictions that were mostly true. What did you guys get for this? Wait, no, wait. I'm just gonna give it to you guys. Who wants it? All right, you do part I. So again, with the pen, you can write with one side. If you need to erase, use the other side.
Okay. So.
So based on the sample, about 46.11% of predictions were mostly true. And then suppose that we want to know whether the evidence suggests that political predictions were mostly true, less than half the time. Test this at the alpha equals 0.1 level significance. All right, give it to someone else. And let them.
Who wants to volunteer? Bernice?
If you don't do it now, you're gonna have to present later.
I didn't even do it. I don't know whether
Get some
the,
paper.
okay.
So H naught, P equals 0.4611, and then H1, P is less than 0.641. And then does anybody from not South ethnicity, have any commentary on that?
What's wrong? Wait,
Is it correct?
Okay, so what were we testing? What did we want to know? Whether the evidence suggests what? Less than? And how much is half? 50%. Yeah, so we want to see whether it's less than 50%. So your H1 is mostly true less than half the time. Do we just have one more? We're not going to do 7 right now. No, we're not going to do that right now either. We'll do that later. All right, so we have one more. Okay, so yeah, H naught P equals 0.5 or 0.50 if you want to sort of connect it to 50%. And H1P is less than 0.5. And again, we should probably kind of put it in words because later on when we do our conclusion sentence, that part in blue is going to be really useful. All right, ready for number 6? Awesome. All right, and this one's kind of the hardest one. The outside diameter of a manufactured part must be 1.3825 inches according to customer specifications. The data shown represents a random sample of 10 parts. Use an alpha 0.05 or a 0.05 level of significance to judge whether the part has been manufactured to specifications. Note, previous analysis suggests that the data is normally distributed. Okay, so who was team 6 again? Who wants to do it? I will let you. All right, so yeah, like I said, you can zoom in, zoom out, right with this, and then you can erase with the other side. All right, so your null hypothesis is that either it was to specifications, meaning on average it was 1.3825. And your alternative is that it was not to specifications. In other words, it was something else other than 1.3825, I think inches, or what was the units we used in here?
Inches.
Yeah, inches. Awesome. Thank you. Did you guys give we didn't do a round of applause for the south side right now, did we? Or sorry, for Mid City, did we? No. All right, Mid City, give a round of applause for Mid City. And for south side, no, for north side, I'm sorry. I'm forgetting my directions today. All right, so again, H1, what H1 is saying is that this was specified, not manufactured to specifications. And your null hypothesis is that it was, basically. All right, awesome. So that is all the hypotheses. So we're going to take a break right now. Just so you guys know what's going to come up is, what do you guys think we're going to do when we come back from the break? Yeah, you guys are going to finish the rest of the question. And so in each group, someone will present B, someone else will do C, someone else will do D, and someone else will do E. So I suggest you guys actually talk to each other. That way you guys are not, you know, what's the word? Like hit off, you guys know, yeah. So I just suggest you guys talk to each other. If you were not here when I called roll, please let me know. Otherwise, be back at 12:27. Is it Martinez left? Okay, got you, Bruce. You're welcome.
Oh, I hate them.
Hold on real quick, sorry. All right, Pacheco, got you. Melanie, I got you. Right. Got you. Thank you. Probably not.
If so, I can just print it, right?
Yeah, if actually, I don't think we're gonna get this, but it's possible we may. Chapter stuff.
Oh, shoot, it's already 12:28.
Yes, I was. Look at the toxic. Although it's kind of what you expect. All right. So for the questions you have, I want you guys to do B, C, D, and E. Oh, B, C, and D in particular, and then E, I guess, as well. But we can kind of do E together to an extent. So go ahead, find the critical values, indicate the critical region and critical values on the diagram below. Find the p-value and test statistic. And then for part D, you do have to be a little bit careful with part D Do you fail to reject the null hypothesis or do you reject the null hypothesis? Keep in mind that each of the problems is going to tell you that the method that they want you to use. So you have to describe how you made your decision, but they're specifying which method to use. Either the classical method or the p-value method. When you reject or do not reject the null hypothesis. So as a reminder about what that is, the classical approach or the classical method is that you will reject the null hypothesis if the test statistic is in the critical region. So if your problem says to use the classical approach, that's how you're making your decision. On the other hand, the p-value method, reject the null hypothesis, reject the whole if the p is low. If the p-value is less than your level of, technically less than or equal to your level of significance, you will reject the null hypothesis. So just keep that in mind. Some problems will ask you to do the p-value method. Some will ask you to do the classical method. And yeah, that's about it. What I recommend is working together because again, you guys are going to be presenting this. And so you don't want to get caught off guard. Just make sure you guys are on the same track as the rest of your team. And that's kind of it. Go ahead and finish up. Like I said, part B, C, and D. And as well, if you do have the time, it's worth doing part E.
No. Wait, are you serious?
How am I supposed to pretend that is not my head? It's also not 12.7. Yeah, you round it, we'll come up with it. Reject the null, different test that critical region reject. That's a class. The other method. Oh, that was. Also, don't forget number 2.
And it would be number 5.
Yeah, so mid-city, you guys are question 2, question 5.
Like, I feel like a big show, you know, I'm just like, I need those. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys are working on question one. So basically, you push up. I think we're set. Are you done with questions? You're still working on this? Okay, is it set? So we'd be without
Oh, yeah, no,
yeah, you want to double check with that. That's what I can represent. You guys are correct. Yeah. Of course, I'm out. How'd you get that?
I said, you just said, oh, five or something, that's what I'm saying, I would only solve this, don't go based on like some this and everything. This was just your.
They're not bad. Would you remember that the homework when the night father?
So it's all good, you know? And no one knew. And now,
Which one are you doing?
comes out, you know, okay, come back.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, the project, you know, you find the phone, but I'm just so hard to figure the time, right? Okay, you can find the stuff. Yeah.
If you're over working, I think it was question three. You gotta recommend question three people, kind of make sure you guys are on the same track. That way it's not like someone presents something and you're like, wait. And question six people kind of think.
Like, for Tom.
You guys can, very much.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to have to figure it out.
You're doing one question at a time, guys.
Don't worry, I'm in over it. Thank you. I'm good. Because like, to be honest, credit.
Once again, this part, actually, we have everybody.
You know what, you know, yeah. No, we're gonna start.
Based on that, so we're gonna talk, for the housing market.
Feel bad, we're gonna.
The north side. You guys can also tackle other problems, get it done, so you don't have to copy it. Well, you guys also can do the homework. You have to give it to them.
You know this is being recorded.
You think it's gonna test the money against your photos of that AI?
Apple story gonna come in. Like I have evidence right here. You send warrants, I have to get it done.
He's about to talk about my. Trying to find the way. Before you want it. What do you think? It says what I'm saying.
Trouble on this, trouble on that.
Exactly.
Very traumatic. Statistics is very traumatic. I will be quiet, you're bored.
Can't take pictures of people without.
Well, doing you all again. Right?
So you guys definitely, when you guys are kind of finishing up, right? You guys want to double check everything, just make sure you guys are. That way someone presents everything. That is very good. That's what we want. All right, make sure to check, double check with your group, because you guys will present, she's presenting in about 5 minutes. Yeah, about 5 minutes. Oh, because he gave me a list like he did. Yeah. Sometimes we say like ha. So I'm gonna say like not.
Yeah, you do.
You can generally guess if you have a percentage. The percentage is the type of, or it's a way to. I did it.
So,
I did.
as long as it's prepared.
What's the worst part is like, I don't have that.
No, but honestly, I really love to do it, I'll be honest, like, you know, for example, like, in this class, I'll get it one way, and I'll go with it the other way. I'm like, okay. But it's too much, like, I'm like, let's just say I'm not ready to go. Please, me one day, long.
Now it's going to say.
But it's the same shit. That's good. I was honestly doing it, you know, you gotta work hard enough.
Of course, I can give you.
No, geez, no.
I can do is I can give you a question like, if this was a hypothesis testing, I won't give you sample data, you have to. Like, what is it?
No, 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 he said you were gonna do that. He said you were gonna do that.
So you background for that, you can't do it this way.
So what we can do it.
You have to draw it out and figure out like how. Right?
Oh, you're talking about zero.
That's the point, it's challenging you guys now, you guys are prepared. That's the whole point of this, that's why we're spending so much. I don't, well, I wouldn't mind you guys visiting, but I don't want you guys to have. And what's, you're not gonna repeat.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, I can't accept, no. I think I don't want to take.
All right, so we're gonna do the problems. Number one, college math instructors suggest that students spend 2 hours outside of class studying for every hour in class. For a 4 credit hour math class, students should spend at least 8 hours studying each week. Blah, 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 blah. Does the evidence suggest students are studying less than 480 minutes each week? So our hypotheses are that the mean is 480 and that the mean is less than 480. Our level of significance was 0.05. Alpha is 0.05, so we know that as well. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's start here. Who wants to do part B? Awesome. So the critical value as well as the critical region. Again, you write with one side, you can erase with the other side of the pen, and you can scroll up and scroll down. And then when you do part B, pass it to someone else so they can do part C. All right, so for part B, it looks like the critical value is negative 1.812, and it looks like it's a left tail test. How do we know it's actually mid-city? How do we know this is the left tail?
Because the H1 is less than.
Yeah, for the alternate hypothesis, you have the less than symbol, so that'll place the critical region on the right. And then is your critical value, oh, I see what you're doing. And then, south side, how did you guys get the critical value here?
I got help, but we found the degrees of freedom, which was 10. And then we used the level of, what is that? Level of significance, which was 0.5. And that gave us 1.12. And then we made that
7, right?
table 7. Yeah,
Okay,
sorry.
can you just write that like degrees of freedom equals, alpha equals, and then just use table 7? No, I mean, what does alpha equal? In this case, what does the level significance?
Oops, no.
So then,
Like that? Is that what you want me to write?
yeah, I wanted you to write like alpha equals 1.812, and then I use table 7.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
Okay, what does that equal?
I thought it would, oh, sorry, 0.05. Okay. Alright,
Yeah, and then degrees of freedom on the bottom, DF equals, what did the DF equal? Because I think you had 11 observations?
yes.
Awesome, thank you. All right, pass it on to someone else so they can do part C. Anybody want to do part C? That way we don't have to do part D. All right, and then anybody from Southside, how did you get the test on the p-value?
Use, one stat, T-stat, swing sample with, data.
Yeah, so in this case, because we're testing for the mean, it's gonna be stat T-stats, one stat. And then if you notice, they gave them the information, so they could use with data. Awesome. Yeah, and I would recommend putting your work on the exam, just in case you get it wrong, that means. Awesome, thank you, Seth. All right, pass it on to someone else, so that they can do part D. And then you can erase the red part. So you can erase with this side, if you can erase the red part. Yeah,
Just press it or?
yeah. Exactly. And then go ahead. All right, part D, do you fail to use the null hypothesis? Do you reject the null hypothesis? Using the class format. In this case, it looks like we did not reject the null hypothesis. And
We failed to
then how did you
reject
make your decision? Why did you not reject?
Oh my God.
Sounds like you wanna help? Sure. So you got the null hypothesis because. The test, I'm gonna guess the test statistic and what's gonna be written. Is not in the critical region. Or within the critical region. And then I think we might as well do part E, so pass it on to someone else, so that they can do part E. Anybody want to
I'll
do
just
part
do
E?
You wanna do it?
Yeah, so again, you can. Yeah, just give some time. You can write with this side and you can erase with the other side. And then if you need to zoom in or anything, you can use your fingers. All right, so we failed to reject the null hypothesis, so we did not reject the null hypothesis. So what is our conclusion look like here? Yeah, because again, whenever you do not reject the null hypothesis, it always starts off, there is not sufficient evidence to conclude whatever your H1 is. And I think our H1 was that students are studying less than 480 hours, something like that. Or minutes, not hours. 480 hours a week would be crazy. Awesome, thank you. All right, give it up for Southside. Come on, Northside, Mid-City. Woo, that's a lot of work. And also you guys' writing, why is everybody's writing better than mine? Like by far, you guys' writing is all better than mine. All right, so I'll take care of part F. Math 54 is worth 4 units and Math 54C is worth 2 units. So in total, we're taking 6 units for this class. And what it said in this question was that for every hour, you should spend 2 hours outside of class studying for every hour, or in other words, every unit. in class, 2 hours per unit outside of class. So if this is a 6 hour, if this is a 6 unit class, how many hours should you be studying outside of class every week? 6 times 2 is 12 hours. That's the expectation. That's why like 12 units is or like 15 units is a full-time, you're a full-time student. Because you're 15 units, you're 15 hours inside of class and you're doing 30 hours at least outside of class, which is 45 hours. So that's kind of why it's crazy when I have full-time students who are also full-time workers. It's like, man, you guys are doing quite a bit. Okay, moving on to the next one. We wanted to see whether parents' attitude has changed since August 2002. In other words, we want to see whether the proportion of parents who are satisfied with the education their students receive is still 47%, or whether it's changed. It used to be 47%. Is it still that? All right, so group or mid-city, that would be you guys. Who wants to start off? Here you go. You can write with this side and erase with the other. Okay. Then you can use your fingers to scroll or to zoom in. All right, so it looks like the critical value is plus or minus 196. And how did you get that critical value? Oh, go ahead. Yeah. And how did you get that critical value?
Use table 5.
Yeah. North side, how do you know whether to use table 5 or table 7? Yeah, basically, and how do you know which one you're doing? Proportion. Yeah, so which one's for proportion? Z. Table, yeah, so then you would use table 5, the Z distribution. And south side, how did we know that it was gonna be two sides? How did we know?
You
that
want to
it
do
was gonna be two? Okay,
I'll just see then.
that-
Does it see? I'll give it to you after.
Yeah, specifically, it's not, the H1 has not exactly.
Oh, no, one.
All right, awesome. So go ahead, part C. And if you need to, you can scroll down. whatever
Okay.
you want. Hey, you're left-handed too.
Yay. We're part of that one low percentage.
South, or I'm gonna guess you guys did this for Stack Crunch.
Yes.
Okay, south side, what Stack Crunch function would they use? here? And how would we know which one they're gonna use to get the test statistic and the p-value? Yeah, staff proportions, that's one sample. Because again, if you look back at part A, we have proportion. So that's how we know we're gonna test proportion. Staff proportion stats, one sample. Oh my gosh, you guys are making me so self-conscious about my writing.
Don't worry. I'm writing something.
That's one thing you're gonna have to live with is that there's not a very, like the p-value doesn't get it. There's not a simpler translation.
Okay, that was too much.
It is. Again, I think like I mentioned.
Oh, it's magnetic now. What's
No, like the way you use
What
it
if I-
is straightforward,
It's a Surface
but
Pro.
what it actually means.
Awesome, and then go ahead, someone else, part D. So we're gonna use the p-value method.
Oh my God.
North side, how do we use the
I'm so
p-value method?
shaky.
How do we know whether we will reject or not reject? Compare it to the level of significance. Yes, we're gonna compare it to the level of significance. Thank you, all north side. Yes, go ahead. Make your
Okay.
Decision. Move down. Did we reject? Okay. And that change. Or the satisfaction. That's changed.
I could write it for you, and then you want to do the other one.
All right, yeah, so we're gonna reject the host because the P is low. And specifically, what are we comparing the P value to?
To, the levels, wait, no, hold on. Yes,
The level of significance, I think that's alpha, right?
yes.
Okay, yeah, alpha, the level of significance, which is 0.05. The P value is less than that.
You know what, I can do the concluding second.
And that's the nice thing about the P value. is
Wait,
it
no,
always
your writing's
works out.
nicer. You have nicer writing. Oh my god. Oh,
I mean, you guys all have nicer writing. than I do, so.
no.
That's all that matters.
You want me to go back to my notes and do it? All right, so go ahead with the conclusion sentence in the context of this problem. We rejected the null hypothesis. So north side, someone besides Sam. North side, when we reject the null, how are we going to start our conclusion sentence? Yeah, there is sufficient evidence to conclude whatever our H1 ends up being. Or we have sufficient evidence, something like that. Sufficient evidence to conclude. Now. Not sure. Wow, I already forgot what the question was about. Oh, yeah, because we want to see whether the satisfaction rate among the parents was still 47%, and our alternative was that it was not 47%. It changed. So we want to see where the parents' attitudes towards the quality of education, I think was. Education. Changed, and I think it was August 2002.
Yeah.
One question or two questions down, four more to go. All right, awesome. Give it up for Mid City. All right, who's next? North side. Woo. All right, number 3. Among 734 randomly selected internet users, it was found that 540 of them use the internet for making travel plans. That's your sample, and that's going to be your evidence to see whether or not the proportion was equal to 0.50 or the proportion was greater than 0.50. Proportion of what? Proportion of internet users who use the internet to make travel plans. So another way of saying H1 is that the more than 50% of internet users use the internet to make travel plans. Okay, so we're going to start with part B, what the critical region is, and then we'll start right here. Oh yeah, you guys did 3. That's right. All right, so you write with this side and then you erase with this side. And then go ahead, Mid City, which side is the critical value or critical region going to be?
It's gonna be on the right side.
Yeah, and how do you know it's going to be on the right? Yeah, the H1 has a greater than. So whenever you have a greater than sign, you're going to shade the right side. So the critical value is 233. And you use table 5 for that. I think. Not CV, alpha is 0.01. Yeah, alpha is 0.01. And then we knew we were going to use table 5 again. If whenever you're testing proportion, it's gonna be table 5. If you're testing the mean, that's when you use the T table, which is table 7. Awesome, thank you. All right, and then and there's only 3 of you. And part C, use technology to find the p-value, test that, indicate, not your calculator function, it's gonna be your stat. Look like the test stat is 12.8. And then the p-value was really small, it was less than 0.001. And then Southside, what calculator, or what stat crunch function did they use here? Yeah, because again, we're testing our hypotheses have a proportion. And so we're gonna be testing proportion stats. That proportion stats, 1 sample. I'll pass it on. Again, you write with this side, you erase with this side, and you can scroll, zoom in and such. Okay, so part D. Do you fail to reject the null hypothesis, or are we going to reject the null hypothesis? And then we're going to be using here specifically the classical method. So why did we reject the null hypothesis? Second, we're going to reject the null hypothesis because the test statistic is in the critical region, within the critical region. Awesome, thank you. And why not? All right, conclusion sentence.
All right.
All right.
For question.
For question 3. Yeah, so we rejected the null hypothesis. So Southside, whenever we reject the null hypothesis, how does our conclusion sentence start? When we reject the null hypothesis. Yeah, whenever we reject the null hypothesis, our conclusion sentence is there is sufficient evidence, or we have sufficient evidence. When we do not reject it, that's when we say we do not have sufficient evidence for whatever our H1, whatever our alternative. So in this case, we do have sufficient evidence to conclude that the proportion of internet users, that's right, this is about internet users, who use the internet to make travel plans. There is sufficient evidence to conclude that the proportion of internet users who use the internet to make travel plans exceeds 0.50. Were we testing more than 50 or were we testing less than 50?
More than 50.
More than, okay, yeah, then it exceeds, it's higher than 0.50. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, there is sufficient evidence to conclude that the proportion of internet users who use the internet to make travel plans exceeds 0.50. In other words, more than half of internet users use the internet to make travel plans. All right, give it up for north side. I keep on forgetting my sides. All right, are you guys ready for number 4? All right, number 4. In 1989, the mean age of a death row inmate was 36.2 years. We want to see whether it's higher now. So the H0 was that the mean is the same, and H1 was that the mean was now above 36.2. The mean age of death row inmates is greater than it was in 1989. Southside, are you guys ready to start? All right, who wants to start here?
4B.
Yeah, 4B. Sure, if you want to. All right, so we were testing the mean and we had mean is greater than. So those two parts right there are going to tell us important info about what our critical value is, what size the critical value is going to be, and where we get our critical value from. So it looks like our critical value was 1.684. We used the level of significance of alpha equals 0.05. The sample size was 41. Degrees of freedom is your sample size minus 1, which ended up being 40. And then what table did you use?
Number 7.
Okay, yeah, so just note that as well, table 7. Yeah, and again, the reason we're using table 7 is we look at our hypotheses and we have the mean. And so we know whenever we're testing the mean, we're gonna have to use table 7 for the critical value. Awesome, thank you. All right, if you can pass that on to someone else. That critical value, we either skip that statistic, we'll actually use p-value. But yeah, so go ahead and test that in p-value. Mid-city, how do we know what stack crunch function to use here for the test that in p-value? Yeah, so because we're testing, if we were testing for a proportion, it would be stack proportion test. But we're testing for a mean, and so it's stat t stats one sample. Remember, those will be given on the exam, but you do kind of have to remember, you know, like to look back at your hypothesis. Part B. So we are going to use the p-value method. Based on the p-value, we reject the null hypothesis. South side or north side, I'm sorry, why do we reject the null hypothesis? Any idea about that? What is that in the? Yeah. So be careful a little bit here. It is asking you to do the p-value method.
Oh.
Yeah, so if it asks for the classical method, you would do this, but the p-value method is going to compare it to level of significance. So our p-value is 0.0002. What was our level of significance here? 0.0. Yeah. So I think is the p-value lower than our level of significance? Yes. Yeah, we reject the null because the p-value is less than the level of significance. Significance, sorry, one more time, I forgot. Yeah, our level of significance was 0.05. And obviously our p-value 0.0002 is less than that. All right, so over here. All right, so mid-city, how are we gonna start the conclusion sentence? Yeah, we have sufficient evidence because we rejected the null hypothesis. So therefore, there is sufficient evidence, or we have sufficient evidence how we contact it. To conclude, whatever our alternative was, whatever our H1 was, it's always in terms of our H1. age of death row inmates. Is greater than what it was in 1989. Yeah, so the average person, on average, the people on death row are older than they used to. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure, to be honest. It's a good thing. Awesome, Southside, you guys are done. All right, give it up for Southside. All right, be back at 1:31. I think I'm just gonna do the last two questions myself. Yeah, for the sake of time. But thank you guys for participating and helping out. Um, Team 6, I guess you guys kind of didn't have to present. Gotta visit him.
Fun, because we didn't volunteer for the first time, but I was. Something that's 2 hour drive.
Yep. Okay. It's what? All right, number 5. Our hypotheses, we wanted to see whether most predictions or at least half of predictions were mostly true. Actually, I lied. We wanted to see whether predictions were mostly true less than half the time. So our hypotheses were that P equals 0.5 or 0.50, and P is less than 0.5 or 0.50. Either one is fine. Mid-City, this was yours, right? Okay, so what did you get for the critical value? Okay, and because we're testing for proportion, north side, whenever we're testing for proportion, what table will we use for the critical values? Yeah, so if you're testing for proportion, you're going to use the normal table or the Z table, table 5. And it is on that little, that formula sheet that you will have for the exam. Bless you. And how did we know it was left-tailed? Yeah, the H1 has a less than symbol. So it's a left-tailed critical region. So our critical region is everything less than negative 233. Yeah, so we are going to use stat proportion stats one sample for the test statistic and the p-value. The reason we're going to use those is because, again, and you notice there's this thing, we keep on looking back to our hypotheses. Our hypotheses have a proportion in them. And so therefore it's going to be stat proportion stats one sample. What did you guys get for your test statistic? Negative 2.11. Okay, and then the p-value? 0.176. And something I forgot to put in part B was the level of significance, which is the area of that critical region. That's 0.01. All right, so the test stat of negative 211, it looks like the test stat was not in the critical region. And if the test stat is not in the critical region, north side, what do you do when the test stat is not in the critical region? Yeah, if the test stat is not in the critical region, you do not reject the null hypothesis, or you fail to reject it. And if you fail to reject the null hypothesis, what your conclusion sentence will look like is that there is not sufficient evidence. So the fact that we did not reject it means that there is not sufficient evidence to conclude our H1. And the nice thing is we already put our H1 in words. There's not enough evidence to conclude that political predictions were categorized as mostly true. Or, sorry, actually, it's not really categorized. Were mostly true, are mostly true. Less than half the time. That's basically it. I don't think I have anything else to say. Anything I got wrong or anything? Anything look wrong? Okay, cool. Can I go on to the next question, or do you guys still need a little bit more time? Okay. I'm just gonna kind of go down right here. Okay, can I go to number 6? Okay, so in number 6, we wanted to see whether this piece was made to specifications. In other words, whether the average was the average outside diameter was 1.3825 inches, or it was not, whether it was not equal to 1.3825 inches. And that would be it's not manufactured to specifications. So for part B, find the critical value, indicate the critical regions and the critical values on the diagram below. North side, yeah, north side. What did you guys get for your critical values? $2.262? Yeah, so you can either write plus or minus 2.262, or you can write them out separately. This was a two-tail test. Yeah. And then someone from outside north side, what was the area of each? The level of significance was 0.05. So what was the level, what was the area in a single tail? Yeah. 0.025. Half of that. That's alpha over 2. All right, so it looks like you guys use the mean, so that would be table south side. Whenever you're testing for the mean, do you use table 7 or table 5? Yeah, whenever you're testing for the mean, you're going to be using a t critical value as well as a t test statistic. So the t critical value comes from the t table, which is table 7. And then you also do have to keep in mind the degrees of freedom is going to be n minus 1. So 1 less than your sample size. Mid-city, what was their sample size here? Yeah, you look at here, and there's literally 10 things. You're not mid-city, just kidding. And so that's going to be 10 minus 1, which is 9. And then you also have to use the area in the tail. So you don't just use alpha in this case, because the area in a single tail is 0.025. So it's going to be alpha over 2 you look up. Or I'll just put area is 0.025. All right, beautiful. Let's see. South side, because they were testing for the mean, what stat crunch function are they going to use for the test stat and p-value? Yeah, stat t stats 1 sample. Whenever you're testing for the mean, stat t stats 1 sample. And in this case, it was with data. All right, north side, you guys are gonna have to help me out because I don't know the test stat and p-value. Hold on, wait, sorry. Go ahead. 9583. Awesome. And then the p-value? 0.362? Oh, 0.3629? Like that? Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay, sorry, I wrote it a little bit, let me write it a little bit more clearly. 0.9583 is the test stat and the p-value is 0.3629. Awesome. And then, Mid-City, are they going to reject the null hypothesis or will they not reject the null hypothesis using the p-value method? Keeping in mind this is the p-value and their level of significance was 0.05. Will they reject the null hypothesis or will they not reject it? Why do they not reject? Not low. Yeah, the p-value is 0.3629. The level of significance was 0.05. The p-value is not low. It's greater actually than your level of significance. When the p-value is not low, do not reject the null. All right, and then last part of this question, finally. All right, conclusion sentence. I'm just gonna do it. We did reject the null hypothesis because there is sufficient evidence. For our H1, there is sufficient evidence to conclude and our H1 is that the piece, there's kind of two ways to say it. Either the average diameter was not 1.3825, or you can say there is sufficient evidence to conclude that the piece was not manufactured to specifications. No, because you reject the null hypothesis. Oh, wait, yeah. There is not sufficient evidence. See, this is why you guys should have done this instead of me. You guys get it right. Yeah, but this is also why I wanted you guys to work in groups, because it's really easy to screw up. Like, you guys see, even I screw up. And I have a whole master's degree in stats. And so that's why it's always good to have another pair of eyes or a couple pairs of eyes. There is not sufficient evidence to conclude that the part was, I don't like this because it's double negative, but whatever, was not manufactured to specifications. We got through all 6 hypothesis tests. Now we have question 7. All right, take a breath. Man, that was a lot of hypothesis testing. All right, we're gonna start working on type 1, type 2 errors. All right, for number 7, for each of the following, determine the null and alternative hypotheses and explain what it would mean to make a type 1 and type 2 error in the context of the situation given. Use words, not symbols, to write your errors. I think we're gonna do part A together, and then we'll probably do part B. Sort of, I'll let you guys do that one. Okay, so we're gonna get the hypotheses, and then we're gonna write what the possible type errors are. Again, when I talk about type errors, these are possible mistakes you can do whenever you do a hypothesis test. It does not mean that you for sure did these mistakes. It means that it's a possibility. So historically, the time to order and deliver a pizza at Jimbo's Pizza was 48 minutes. Jim, the owner, implements a new system for ordering and delivering pizzas that he believes will reduce the time required to get a pizza to his customers. So this one's a little bit more difficult to kind of tease through, like what your hypotheses are. But the basic idea is that back in the old system, it took 48 minutes on average. Now we want to see if the new system is quicker. In other words, if the average time for delivery is less than what it used to be, less than 48 minutes. So if we can kind of put words to this, u equals 48 means that the average time is still 48 minutes. In other words, the new system is no better or is no faster. Or it takes the same time, we can say. And what our H1 is saying is that the new system is better. It delivers pizzas quicker. So the type errors. Remember, an error is remember what an error is. An error is that you made a mistake. You said something, but it's wrong. So whenever you write an error, there should be a contradiction. Like that's what makes it a mistake. So for a type 1 error, we're going to reject the null hypothesis, but the null hypothesis is true. So let's start with the first part of that, because there's two parts to this. Rejecting the null, this is what you say, and the second part is what the actual situation is. If I reject the null hypothesis, remember what reject, it means you're saying it's wrong. If I'm rejecting the null hypothesis, I'm rejecting this and I'm saying the other one is right. So I'm saying the new system delivers pizzas more quickly. That's the first part for reject the null hypothesis. I reject HO and I basically go with H1. You can be a little bit looser with the language for your type 1, type 2 errors than the conclusion sentences. So I can just say I claim. This is that first part. Rejecting the null is the same as saying I claim that the new system delivers pizzas more quickly. So that was the reject the null part. Now the second part is, but the null is true. So in other words, and remember, this is an error. So I say something, but the truth is something else. That's what makes it a mistake. So if the null hypothesis was true, what does that mean? Yeah, but in fact, the new system isn't quicker. It takes the same amount of time. But in fact, the new system takes the same amount of time.
Any questions on the type one error? How it was constructed, where anything came from? That's the movie I found.
All right, I did say we're gonna do part A together. I kind of lied. Go ahead and do the type 2 error. What does it mean to not reject the null hypothesis? But the null hypothesis is in fact false. I would recommend working with other people to kind of get an idea. Again, especially if this is something that you have some difficulty with. Excellent. Now, another way you can write it, wouldn't have time. Another way you can write that. Either one. How do you do that? That's fine. There is a direction, not just it's not easy. That's all. Yep. Yeah, this is why you want to put your hypotheses in words as well. Because if you don't, then it definitely is a lot harder. Yeah. Yeah, so type 2 error is when you do not reject the null hypothesis, but the null hypothesis is false. I kind of want to point out probably maybe something you guys noticed, but maybe you didn't. This part in blue, like I said, technically you don't have to write that for the hypotheses. But if you didn't have that, it would be a lot harder to write these type 1 and type 2 errors. Like it would take a lot more brain work. Because for the type 2 error, you do not reject the null hypothesis. Remember what it means to not reject something. You're keeping it, you're claiming it. So you're claiming the null hypothesis. You claim the new system takes the same amount of time, or that the new system is no faster than the old one. You claim that the new system is no quicker than the old system, or is not quicker than the old system. So that's the do not reject the null part. And then there's a second part of that. Remember, this is an error, so something went wrong. What went wrong is that it turned out the null was false. Did I mess this up? Oh, no, the null is false. Yeah. So again, in fact, it turns out that this one's wrong. The other one is right. Yeah, and so that's why it's a mistake. Or that's why it's an error. Because I said it's not quicker, it turns out it is. It turns out H1 was true. But in fact, the new system does deliver pizzas more quickly. Or the new system is quicker. Yeah, so it can be a bit hard, like they are a little bit awkward to construct. This is one of the more difficult things. I don't really have like, to be honest, I don't have any easy tips for this. You kind of have to be careful. I guess the one tip I would have is if you do get a type 1, type 2 errors, it's a good idea to actually write out what your hypotheses are saying in words, because that's going to make it a lot easier. If you don't do that, then it's sort of like, yeah, it's a lot more difficult. Okay, any questions? Right, part B. All right, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, 19.6% of children aged 6 to 11 years are overweight. A school nurse thinks that the percentage of 6 to 11-year-olds who are overweight is different in her school district. Do we want to give like a direction? Should we say like lower or higher? Yeah, different is kind of like, why would we care if it's just different? Okay, so yeah, let's say higher. Okay, so what do we think the hypotheses are going to be? Greater than. Yeah, 19.6%. We changed to the decimal. So we think in her school district, the proportion in her school district is higher than it is overall. Mhm. Okay, go ahead and do the type 1, type 2 errors. Again, what I recommend is putting your hypotheses in words, just like we did over here. And yeah. Go.
Is that crazy? We technically didn't earn any new material today. This was all review. So especially when you're studying for the exam, this would be very, very useful. Yeah. And actually, I don't think we're gonna start chapter 11 today, but if you want to pick up the notes and the activity. Here. Chapter 11. Actually, that wasn't as epic as I thought. There we go.
Yeah, so just a reminder that we did change the question. We did say it's higher instead of different in her school district.
Turn in 10-3 on grade school. You're done?
Don't forget there's the last page.
Okay. The nice thing again about P-Dot, it's so easy. Did see any questions? Well, I think it's pretty easy. Do the P values, the standard, the standard. P-value. Exactly. Their number for page 8. Revisit question 1.
Oh, that was
Whatever. It's not okay for this.
That one was easier. Okay. Yeah.
So here I would say. First write out your, that helps a lot.
And I'm just like in my head, like, so it would be. No, there's no more like this. More than. Right?
Yeah, we know overall it is like,
Right, yeah.
I think that's we're trying to see if the curse school district.
Okay.
Outside questions, query, double checking stuff. Work side, any questions, queries, concerns? At this point, you want to put Rachel and grade one first. Then that's waiting. So what I would say right here. Yeah. Yeah, because otherwise you are trying to judge it. It's like a lot of mental judgment. Like at the same time, trying to translate in your head, but trying to figure out what goes where. I. That's all we can put, yeah, but. I, I. It shouldn't, but it's there. If you want to X out the equal sign, you can.
Wait, could I like?
But it's already typed out, so I can't untype it. Percentage of what? That area in the critical region. Yep,
Area,
let's say the alpha is the level.
but which one? Is it be wrong? Like, let's say it's, for example, 0.05. But I'm just.
Okay, go to the. Back to question.
What would you? This is a mistake.
No, I'm just trying to.
What I would say, I would say I claim that the percent, the overweight percentage in the school nursing district is higher than that. I think that the rate in her school district is higher than that. But in fact, it's only 9%. Or you can say higher than CDC estimate. But in fact, it's the same.
Oh, like you want me to put the numbers?
Or something like that.
Well, it's gonna say you're going. Oh, it's gonna say what we say is first. I would never let it. I would combine.
Oh, I see it's higher. Yes. Yes. Guys do the other one? Off the rate or whatever the percentage. Higher than that. So. It says, but in fact. So this is what.
And do we have? All right, so for part B, there's actually a lot of different ways you can write this, part B. I think I'm gonna write H1 as how would I write H1? percentage of overweight is higher at her school district? We can figure out later how to do that better. Higher at her district or in her district. And this one is the percentage is the same. Or is 19.6%. That might actually be a better way of writing it. Because again, if you actually read it, that's literally what your null hypothesis is saying. The percentage or the proportion is 0.196. So the percentage is 19.6%. This one is saying the percentage is higher. Okay, so type 1, if you're rejecting the null, remember what that means. If you reject the null, you're saying this is wrong, and you're going with the other one. You're claiming this. You're claiming that the percentage of students who are overweight so she claims that the percentage of students who are overweight in her school district is more than 19.6%. So that's the first part. Now, the second part is it turns out you're wrong. In fact, yeah, the null hypothesis is true. The percentage is 19.6%. And yeah, you can say it a couple different ways. For now, I'm just going to write it one way, but in fact, the percentage is 19.6%. Or should I say is 19.6% or just is not more than that? Okay, the percentage is 19.6%.
If you practice, say it's not weird.
Yeah, but we're not going for accuracy right now. In fact, there's not sufficient evidence, blah, blah. We're not going to, yeah, we're not doing that. All right, type 2 error. We do not reject the null hypothesis. So we don't reject it, meaning that we keep it. We claim the percentage at her school. Is 19.6%. So what we say does not match up with what actually is happening. And this happens whenever you do a hypothesis test. There's a possibility that that your sample is misleading. But in fact, the percentage is higher than that. Woo. All right, turn in chapter 10, activity 3. On Gradescope. Don't forget page 8. We unfortunately were not able to do that. I will be posting the exam stuff by tonight, like all the review material and such. And I think that's it. Anything else I'm missing? Exam next Wednesday. Yeah, the exam is next Wednesday. I will be at the math lab from 2:45 to 3:45. Is that my office hours? Yeah, let's go with that. 2:45 to 3:45 at the math lab. Take care. Have a beautiful day. You are welcome. Smile more and don't forget to floss.
I asked for help and you didn't help me. Can you just double check that? Because I don't want to rewrite it, please.
Which one?
Both of them. I just don't want to.
I'll take it.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay.
there a reason they don't use the terminology like false positive, false negative? It feels like.
It is the same thing. It actually is the same thing. It's just different fields use different terminology.
One is self-defining and the other one's just random, like to know what a type 1 error is versus the type 2 error, you have to actually know. False positive.
I don't have a good answer to that. It's
It's
just when you go from a pure stats point, you just use different terminology. Yeah, that's it. You too. Prepare for it, but there's a possibility we may have to only have certain sections chapters instead of all chapters. Unfortunately. May something. May 9. May 9? Oh, shoot, that's quick. All right, take care.
Cause I don't think I'm gonna talk about it.
Aw.
I'll say that. He's so confident.
We're not just saying, oh, like,
Give a lot.
I wish you had more confidence, but
You're just fun.
I can start doing the homework.
Yes and no. I look at the problems and I just get so confused. I'm like,
You could ask my instructor.
but the thing is, like, bro, honestly, just do it. You should see, I email him with the double like, you don't ever know. I just need clarification. I'd be like, hey, like, yeah, just do that. Right? You're doing your job. No, I don't. I just straight up email you. I don't do ask my instructor.
And then I tell you that to use ask my instructor.
But isn't it the same thing? I'm still asking you for help.
I'd rather ask my instructor, then I get the question. So if you say I have a question on the event.
Oh, but I don't really ask questions about the whole guys, questions about like, to be doing class. It's different. I don't know. I'm like, it's way different though. The
Yes,
homework
yeah.
is way more different. Yeah. I'll see y'all later. I feel like it's
So,
harder.
it's kind of repetitive.
But the thing is like, it's so much homework, that like my brain that doesn't like wanna say.
It's better if you do three than you don't do any. Especially since 3 questions have 28 questions.
I know, you love doing that. Shit is. I was like,
But that's
oh,
also
done.
like sad, you have a lot of work.
But the exam feels like, thank you. It was late and then I was, the exam feels much more fun to do than the homework. I don't know if that sounds good. Because it doesn't have like.
No, I get it.
Yeah, I enjoy doing the exam more than I enjoy doing the homework.
I don't blame
Like
you.
what the exam should feel like.
Sometimes when I'm helping with the homework, I'm like, man, I hate this question.
Then why do you? I've been going on my third attempt and then be like, your professor has only limited 3 attempts. I'm like, oh my god, please just give me the right answer.
Or you could ask my instructor.
Nah, so I like to do my homework all at once and I know you're not gonna respond. I'm going to go, and that's when I use ChatGPT to study. I take a picture of my screen and I ask it to explain it to me. And it gives me this, and then I don't like the way it explains it to me. And then I say, can you simplify that? Cause I still don't get it. I get mad at it. And I say, I'm mad at that.
I'm sorry.
I know, is it bad? I know people say like, don't use ChatGPT, but I use it to study, like not to cheat. Does that make sense?
Like anything else, it's a tool.
Yeah, you see,
Just like when I post the answers, like the answers can help, because if there is something you don't know, it can tell you.
no, like I'd be having a conversation with it sometimes, like to confirm that I understand, I'd be like, so does that mean that blank is used to do blank and blank is blank? And I'd be like, yes, correct. Or sometimes they'd be correcting me like, no, close enough, but it means blank, 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 and I'm like, oh, I need to study this more.
Yeah, ChatGPT is really useful, but it's not perfect.
I know, that's why I don't rely on it, because it's AI, you know, it doesn't really know.
No, it literally doesn't know.
It's a summary of what's on the internet, so that's why I don't rely on it, but I use it sometimes.
The basic way that ChatGPT works is it mimics what other people say.
Yeah, see, but then you can't be 100% right. That's why I don't rely on it.
Yes, like if you're doing an English essay, since it's opinion, a lot of
Oh,
times
no.
you can kind of get away with it.
I would never use it for it.
Yeah, but
No, my professor gets my dumb class work. You do with that.
No, I feel like they can tell. Like, you can tell. Honestly, sometimes I've been reading the discussions, and I'm like, this person literally copied and
Oh, yeah.
pasted it. I'm like,
You can tell.
I don't even understand what the person is trying to say. That's how I know it's ChatGPT.
Also, you can tell very easily because ChatGPT will use.
You know those
the
lines? Yes, the bar. I'm like, that's straight up.
oh my gosh, did they straight up copy and paste that?
Yeah,
I remember
but
before.
damn, at least try remixing it or something.
I know judicial affairs needs to see ChatGPT come.
Yeah, ChatGPT, it's like, again, it's not inherently bad. It's just,
Free conversations with
Some
chat.
therapy, free therapy.
Some free therapy with chat.
it's
limited. Yeah,
Yeah, but.
And then we're not sure how long it's gonna last because it's not profitable.
No.
Yeah,
Well,
so if it's not, and it takes a lot of energy. Like it's takes a lot of
it's
money.
so quick, no, but I use it like, for example, let's say I wanna make a new recipe or something, I also use it for that, like, it's just a little small resource, I'd be like, give me, I don't know, what should I make with these ingredients or something, and it gives me this whole list. There's another website like that. ChatGPT is just so quick, and I don't have to scroll, I can edit it, okay, no.
Yeah, that's cool. The thing though is they still haven't figured out how to make it profitable.
Well, I love the food though. It's awesome.
I don't think. That's why you get all the questions. with
Well,
Laura.
Judith will be a tutor when she eventually comes back.
She used to be the old math lab.
Coordinator.
coordinator. Yeah, she got,
But she was a tutor.
yeah.
She started as a tutor, then she became the coordinator, basically. And I
she-
believe she will be returning as a tutor eventually whenever she returns.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of bad things about the tutors here, that's why I don't even bother.
The Atlanta tutor though, he's amazing. Sorry, I'm gonna say, homie, that is amazing.
That's why I ask you all the questions, because like, at the end of the day, somebody can teach me one way, but if it's not that way, then.
Not necessarily. I suggest we're learning from other people. Because maybe the way I teach it doesn't connect with you, and the way someone else teaches it does connect with
I'm a visual learner and I like how you, I mean, I've never took any other math class, but I like how you make us pull up like our own screen and you write on your notes and then you write on like, you're like teaching, but you're writing at the same time, but we're writing at the same time, well, at least me, I'm writing on my notes. And I feel like that's what makes me learn. So I do like your way of teaching. And I told you this before, it reminds me of that one guy on YouTube.
that guy is